Okay, so Heather Barnett is an artist, researcher, and educator working with natural phenomena and living systems, often in collaboration with scientists, artists, participants, and organisms. Using diverse media, including printmaking, photography, animation, video, installation, and participatory experimentation, and working with biological materials and imaging technologies, her work explores how we observe, understand, and relate to the world around us. Heather's work has deeply influenced our project's approach and philosophy, and we are honored to have her open up the space for relational exercises with other organisms and focus on what we can learn from the communication, coordination, and attunement of lesser organisms. With that, please join me in welcoming Heather Barnett.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's great to be here today to help launch this exciting project. I think the insights and the discoveries that are going to happen in the next few years are going to be transformative for a lot of different industries and sectors. In thinking about what I could contribute here today, I started pondering on what it means to become regenerative. What is that becoming? As artists, designers, entrepreneurs, and what it means if we shift our perspective from a human position, if we attempt to take a multi-species approach. So for the next half hour, I'd like to explore with you what lessons we can learn from other lives, other ways of being, lives which are all too often considered lesser than our own. I'm an artist working with living systems and imaging technologies. I see my job as mediation, kind of mediating between different species subjectivities. I make films, I create installations, I conduct collective experiments as a way to speculate on other forms of intelligent life. Before I say more about that, I'd like to unpack the title of the research project, Becoming Regenerative. To think about what this state of becoming might look like, to think how regenerative might differ from other forms of sustainable creative practice. I often turn to the dictionary at these moments, and the dictionary says becoming refers to a process of change, a transition. Regenerative means to regrow or be restored, particularly after being damaged or lost. The dictionary offers us an example, the regenerative powers of nature. If we look further at the synonyms of these words, becoming is synonymous with growing, getting, going, coming, turning, running, changing, transforming, altering. Regenerative synonymous with renewing, restoring, revitalizing, reviving, invigorating, imparting strength and vitality. I'd like you to think about these terms in relation to what you do as creative practitioners, as researchers, as innovators, as simply human beings in this world. What are you doing already? What could you be doing more of? In terms of the objectives of the B-Regen project, their aim is to inform entrepreneurial support ecosystems as they transition to regenerative innovation in light of the weighty environmental and societal challenges we currently face. The questions for their investigation centre on how nature positive goals translate into practices, products and services, with a focus on interspecies creativity and its potential impacts on this sector. So I'd like us to hold on to some of these key terms: support ecosystems, nature positive goals, and interspecies creativity. And think about what kind of support occurs within a creative entrepreneurial ecosystem, how we define nature positive goals, how we know if we've succeeded in achieving them, and what kind of issues are at play within interspecies creativity. How are the relationships defined in this arrangement? Which species have agency or authorship? To explore these questions, I will draw on some other creatures who embody intelligences very different but relatable to ours. These creatures, they're slime moulds, ants, and birds. They're not considered greatly in the hierarchy of species. The slime mould and the ants, they tend to live out of sight in the undergrowth, minding their own business. They're not often considered as individuals, even. They are often used as model organisms within scientific research, often without the need for any ethical approval. Birds we're more aware of and appreciate more, but we don't really consider them in our everyday lives. What these organisms share is their status as superorganisms, where many individuals operate collectively within a natural system, constantly sharing information, creating feedback loops of interaction, and generating emergent outcomes far greater than the sum of their parts. Other superorganisms we're probably familiar with are beehives, termite mounds, and shoals of fish. Many areas of human inquiry are trying to decode the mechanisms of these superorganisms to understand how, from relatively simple elements and simple rules, much complexity of behaviour, decision-making, and self-organisation can occur. So I'm not suggesting that these creatures hold the answers to our challenges, polycrisis challenges that were mentioned earlier, or form the basis for becoming regenerative. But what I am suggesting is to become truly regenerative, we need to better understand other forms of life and entertain other forms of intelligence and sensory subjectivity. And we need to start thinking beyond a solely human perspective and to deeply consider other ways of knowing and of being in this world. So this is an invitation to think with some superorganisms for a while and attempt a little perspective shift. So let's start with the ants, a familiar organism to us all, no doubt. This is a colony of Spanish ants from the Almerian Mountains, who I've been observing and gently intervening with for a number of years. We see the entrance to a nest, many ants busy bringing back grass they've foraged for in the field, tidying up the nest by taking out small stones and debris. Not all the ants are the same. They have many different jobs. Some are worker ants who go out to forage. They tend to be older, more experienced ants. You have the cleaner ants who spend most of their time around the entrance, keeping tunnels clear. And the soldier ants who guard the nest entrance, keeping it safe from predators. Inside the nest, beyond our vision, are the nurse ants tending the eggs and the larvae, and the carer ants looking after the queen, who stays deep inside the heart of the nest all her life, laying eggs. Some queens live to be 30 years old and lay millions of eggs in their lifetime, all from a single fertilization event many years before. I have a huge respect for the queen. You may notice that the soldier ants are helping to break down large pieces of grass and helping to clear large stones. So in an ant colony, whilst jobs are established, they can shift their role depending on the needs of the colony. You might also notice that there's a soldier ant removing a dead sister from the nest. So they remove their dead and place them in a graveyard site away from the nest entrance, which could be seen as a form of culture. Up for debate later. They're adaptable and flexible, and they're entirely self-organising. No single ant is in charge. They all do what they need to do without instruction, which means they can respond quite quickly when a giant food offering lands on their doorstep. So ants are in constant communication with each other through pheromone trails left in their environment. This leaves a chemical signal that other ants can pick up on. This tells them information about food sources or potential predators or threats. They also exchange greetings with a little touch of their antennae. It's very cute. When they meet each other, this is them checking that they're kin and passing information between individuals. And this information cascades through the masses and is distributed through these local neighbour interactions. Whilst an individual ant is not hugely intelligent, an average ant has around 250,000 neurons in their brain, compared to a human that has around 86 billion neurons. The colony as a whole has a wealth of knowledge. So the intelligence of the ants is in the collective. The environmental sensitivity and the global intelligence that happens through the passing of information in the collective. They do manage to move their oversized breakfast into the nest very successfully through this collective action. It takes them a while. Let's next turn to a brainless blob, the slime mould. Just out of interest, how many of you are familiar in some ways with slime mould? Just as a show of hands. It's always good to know if we've got a slime mould friendly audience. Thank you. I think that was about half, which I'm pretty impressed about, actually. For those of you who are not familiar with slime moulds, there are around 1,000 known species of slime mould in the world. Slime moulds are not plant, they're not animal, and they're not fungi. They belong to the kingdom of the amoeba. A slime mould is a single-celled organism, which means it's many cells operating together as one single entity. They form a mass supercell. So a slime mould is made up of often millions of individual nuclei, all sharing a cell membrane or operating as one entity. In their natural habitat, as most of the images here are, you can find them in temperate woodland. They tend to forage they feed on rotting vegetation, so they eat the bacteria, help break down the forest floor. But you can just as commonly find these organisms in laboratories of biologists and roboticists and the studios of artists and designers. This is Physarum polycephalum, which is the many-headed slime mould, which is used as a model organism in many areas of research. It's a nomadic amoeba. It's highly exploratory and curious. Here it is escaping one dish into another in my studio. It's looking for new adventures. The slime mould has no sensory organs. It has no central nervous system. It has no brain, not a single neuron to its name. Yet it is attributed with all manner of problem-solving attributes that we associate with brain function. So just a few examples. It can find the shortest and the most efficient route through a maze, connecting between food sources. It can optimize networks, here replicating the Tokyo suburban rail system to a high degree of accuracy. It can learn from its environment, and it can pass that learning onto other slime moulds, even after being dormant for over a year. So the world over, researchers are decoding the biological behaviours of slime mould to better understand its unique form of intelligence, to extract its computational rules, and in some cases apply those rules to diverse fields of inquiry. So examples of that application could be a computer model simulating the Tokyo experiment, and slime mould simulations are being used in many different computer programs, looking at resource distribution algorithms, solving the travelling salesman problem. On the right, we have a robot controlled by a slime mould. And slime moulds are seen as memristors, transistors with memory. So this idea of WEX computing, biological computing, is really in ascendance at the moment. I did a recent Google Scholar search. I always check how many references there are to slime mould before I give a talk. And today there is over 86,000 published academic papers on slime mould. And this is from a huge diversity of different domains of knowledge. The slime mould has inspired and intrigued scientists from many different areas: biophysics, biochemistry, but also, computer science, microelectronics, robotics. And then with the fields of art and design, you've got architects, urban designers, visual artists, programmers, choreographers, musicians, I could go on, all interested in this self-organizing system where decision-making and knowledge distribution and control mechanisms are decentralized. As an artist, I've worked for many years with the slime mould as a material, a model, and a metaphor. And over this time, I have learnt a great deal from the organism. We talked about becoming as an ongoing process. I think my My relationship to the organism has changed over years, but I've grown to understand the slime mould's motivations and its behaviours, how it responds to my cues and interventions. I can predict what it does. I know its likes and its dislikes, but ultimately I cannot control the outcome. So it's a form of negotiated co-creation between two very different forms of intelligent life. I create environments for the slime mould to inhabit and to navigate, and I observe and I intervene as it explores. So this is my homage to the maze experiment. I built a large replica of the maze and invited the slime mould to freely roam, making decisions about which turn to take in search of food. And this film shows several days of growth captured through time-lapse photography. The top speed of a slime mould is about 1 centimetre an hour. So it is a meditative form of observing in real time, but time-lapse photography allows me to amplify slime mould time to meet human time. Many of my studies start with a question. Here I was interested in what would happen when two genetically identical slime moulds meet. Would they be friend? Would they be foe? What would happen? So let's see. There's a little hesitation, just checking each other out. And then it's almost like a kiss. They touch, they merge, and all the information from one slime mould passes to the other. This network is formed. So two become one, forming this incredibly strong network and distributing information across the entire cell. As a chemically sensing organism, it's responding to attractants and repellents in its environment. It's in constant dialogue with its environment. So as an organism, it's highly attuned to fluctuations, it's adaptive to change, and it's resilient to disturbance. So I see the slime mould as something that we can learn from, not by falling into anthropomorphic patterns of projecting our own sensibilities onto it, though I recognise that to some extent that is an impossibility. You know, we cannot not be human looking at this other form of life. We can never really know what it wants, what it needs. But it provides us with a vehicle through which we can examine our own behaviours and our own capacities within this shared ecosystem that we inhabit. So the lessons from slime moulds manifest in different ways in my work. I create video installations amplifying slime mould behaviour beyond human scale. So this is an invitation to become immersed in another sensory realm. I run workshops. I invite people to bring their own questions to the organism, to create experiments, and quite often to take home a new pet with care instructions. I didn't bring any today though, sorry. I employ the organism as a relational model to investigate other forms of networked behaviour. So looking at how networks behave across different species, different systems, different scales. And sometimes I invite people to challenge their own capacity for collective communication and cooperation against that of a single-celled organism through a behavioural embodied experiment called Being Slime Mould. It is, of course, an impossible task to be slime mould, but many interesting things happen in the trying. So I'd like to go back to those key terms that I highlighted earlier on, and I might regret doing this, but I thought I should critique my own interspecies creativity against the B-Regen criteria. So I was thinking about, where are the support ecosystems in my practice? There's me and the organism, the relationship there. There is a duty of care. I care for it, I feed it, I work hard to avoid killing or causing harm to it. But I am creating situations which are out of context for the organism, and I'm willing it to perform for my camera, for audiences, for participants. There's a wider cultural ecosystem within the practice, the collaborators, the artists and the scientists that I work with, the participants, viewers, musicians that I'm bringing in to the practice. And I'm creating the conditions for interactions between those organisms and creating environments within which that can happen. I was thinking about the nature positive goals. What are they and how are they met? The intention of the work is to mediate between human and other than human forms of intelligent life, to raise awareness, to encourage people to take note, to appreciate. And I guess that could in itself be defined as nature positive. That having encountered a slime mould through my artworks, maybe people next time they walk in the woods might turn a log, take a moment, have a look, see if they can find a slime mould. They might ponder on other sensibilities. And then there's interspecies creativity, how we define that. And I think this is a far more challenging concept. Sure, I am being creative with another species, but I'm not sure what the slime mould gets out of this relationship. Yes, it is a process of co-creation, but it's not collaboration. The slime mould is not choosing to work with me. I mean, I rationalize this as I'm a self-appointed spokesperson for the slime mould, and that I am encouraging other people to recognize its subjecthood. So there's a sort of benevolent role there. But yeah, you and the slime mould, you can decide how well I'm doing on that front. What I can say is that my relationship with the organism and my practices have shifted over time. All the time that I've been working with it, it is a state of becoming, it is an ongoing process, and it's constantly shifting. And we can talk more about that later on. I'd like to finally look at birds. And for this, I've borrowed a beautiful film by Jan van Eycken called The Flight of the Starlings. Now, you have probably seen a murmuration of starlings. If not in person, then in videos like this. So we've got tens of thousands of birds swooping and turning at dusk before they settle down to roost. Now, there are many theories as to why they do this. Some think it's a feeding behaviour, some think it's predator avoidance, others think it's just part of their social cohesion as a flock. And there are different theories about how they do it. But what is generally agreed is that the starlings are following two main rules: attraction and repulsion. Attraction, it's safer to stay close together, to stay in the centre of the flock. And you hear me and the birds at the same time. I'm meant to make it quiet. If it's touching, let me know which way that is. So attraction, they're safer in the mass. Repulsion, they need to stay a certain distance apart in order not to bump into each other, not to fall out of the sky. So according to these studies, each bird is observing the movements of just 7 other birds. There have been scientific experiments to assess this, and this is a general agreement within collective behavioural science that the birds are observing 7 other birds, no more, around them. So they're just tuning into their nearest neighbours. And they're just observing that behaviour, that movement, and they're adjusting their movement in accordance to it. You cascade that behaviour, that local behaviour, across the whole flock, and you get these kind of synchronizing, twisting, or inspiring sights. So a murmuration demonstrates what incredible coordination can emerge from incredibly simple rules and without any form of leadership. So I'm curious how this might look in human terms. We could ponder upon this as a thought experiment, but it occurred to me that we could actually test this in practice as a collective experiment. I'm curious to see what would happen if we followed some simple rules. So this would require some very, very low level participation. Are you up for doing a very simple experiment? Yeah, I didn't quite hear that. Oh, you're up for doing a simple experiment? Yes, we're going to get a little bit pantomime. Okay, so we're going to borrow some rules from the starlings, and we're going to see if we can create a human murmuration. Okay, so Preferably standing, but sitting is okay as long as you can move, but preferably standing. What I'd like you to do is to think like a starling. So reduce your field of vision. You're not interested in what's going on around the room. You're just interested in your nearest neighbours, around 7 people around you. If you're at the front, you can turn around so you can see people better. So just reduce your field of vision. Sometimes it's easier to look kind of towards your feet and just in your peripheral vision, take in the people around you. Observe their movements and just replicate what you see. What you see in your peripheral vision, just copy it. You might want to amplify it slightly. Ignore everything else and just observe your nearest neighbours. And we're going to see what happens. Now, once you're in this, it's impossible to see what's going on. And I want you to stay focused just on those nearest neighbours. But I'm going to record it to see what kind of emergent things happen. So just keep tuning in to your neighbours. Be aware of the kind of, in your peripheral vision, everyone around you. Observe and copy, observe and copy. And we'll just let it run for a minute or two. Keep going, stay focused, nearest neighbours. This is not going to be posted online. At least I don't think it is. We can blur. Let's just run it a little bit longer. So just, focus, nearest neighbours. Don't get distracted. Just, what are your nearest neighbours doing? Amplify that movement you see. That was beautiful. And you settled down to roost spontaneously. I have never seen that happen before. That was amazing. I will try and connect it up at the end and play it back to you, because when you're in it and you are just focusing on nearest neighbours, you have no idea what's going on across the system. But there are so many beautiful things happening and cascading and movement of movements around the whole room. So I'd really like to show you so you can see the global murmuration. But that ending was remarkable. And because I was thinking, how do I end this? I didn't need to. You ended it spontaneously without any leadership or any decision making, just by a prompt within the collective. So thank you very much for creating the beautiful human murmuration. I would like to end just by sort of recapping on what I think was my suggestion of how we might become more regenerative. And I will leave these for you to consider. You're all coming from different perspectives. I'm an artist and an educator. You may be coming from design, from innovation, from other areas of research, or none of the above. So just these are kind of provocations to open up thinking for you to meet this idea of becoming regenerative. Attuning to different subjectivities. So thinking about who are the non-human actors in your ecosystem and how those different subjectivities can be accounted for or considered. Creating the conditions for emergence, sometimes lowering hierarchies and relinquishing control can generate incredible unforeseen outcomes, as we have just witnessed. Fostering reciprocal interrelationships, thinking about the give and the take. Relationships don't always have to be equal, but they should be equitable. And nurturing relational ecologies. And what I'm referring to here is embracing the complexity and the dynamic nature of those relationships within the ecosystems that you create. So thank you very much for your time and your participation, and I will hand you back to your hosts. Thank you.